What is up, Sopranos fans? Kino here. I'm back with another Soprano log. Today we're looking at the second episode of the third season, Proshai, Livushka. Apologies to my Russian friend if I didn't get that right, but a lot going on in this episode. And we open up with Tony passed out on the floor. We have this rewind sequence where we go back in time and see what Tony was doing before he passed out. He goes downstairs at his home and sees Meadow watching The Public Enemy, which is his favorite film, and also it's David Chase's favorite film. He has a lot of references to it throughout the series. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about that movie, I actually did a review, which I'll link in the description. Tony sees that Meadow is actually down there with a friend from school. It's a black kid. His name is Noah. Noah is from Los Angeles. He's got family in Hollywood. And when Meadow's not in the room, Tony kind of talks with him and tells him basically to stay away from his daughter. He doesn't want his daughter with a black guy. And, he's obviously really offended by that. And later on, when Meadow learns about what Tony said to him, she is pissed off, throughout the episode. And we're going to see that play out throughout this season. But after this confrontation with Noah, Tony passes out while he's eating some gabagool. Tony goes to see Livia at her house. He's being nice to her, presumably because he's worried that she might testify against him because she was arrested for using stolen airline tickets. And the FBI know it was Tony who got it for her. So they're hoping that Livia will testify against him. Now, the actress Nancy Marchand, who plays Livia, actually passed away before season 3 was started. So even though we see her in this episode, it's actually CGI. According to Wikipedia, the CGI cost around $250,000. And I'll have to say that that was a waste of money because this is really, really bad CGI. It's one of the worst moments, I think, in The Sopranos. The biggest mistake, at least. They're using old lines of dialogue from season 1 and 2. And it's just awkward to see Tony trying to interact with this CGI figure. It just doesn't look good at all. Really, they're not even having like a good character moment or anything. It's not like a good send-off for her. They're literally just talking about this plot line, which they're not even going to follow through with. The original plot line for season 3 was going to involve a trial with Tony and whether or not Livia was going to testify against him. But due to her unfortunate death, they had to drop that storyline. It's really sad that she's not a part of the series anymore. She was absolutely great for the first 2 seasons. But we'll see in this season and onward where the series goes now that it's not really tied to the mother and son conflict that we started out with. But Tony goes back home. He's outside taking care of his tomatoes, which I think is kind of a reference to Godfather when, Vito dies in the tomato garden. We'll see another Godfather reference coming up here, but after he comes back in from that, he learns that Livia has passed away in her sleep. So he's not really sure how to feel about this. They go over to the house. They meet with Svetlana, who is his mistress Irina's cousin, who was taking care of Livia this whole time. They drink some vodka with her, and she utters the title of this episode, which means goodbye, little Livia. The next day, people come over to the house to give their condolences. But we're actually introduced to Ralph Cifaretto. Ralph is one of the members of his crew. He's been off in Miami this whole time, and we're introduced to him in this episode. It seems that Tony really doesn't like Ralph straight from the get-go. We'll learn more about that why, but basically Ralph is a piece of shit, but a really funny one. And we're introduced to this conflict. There's a garbage dispute going on. They've been burning trucks and setting dumpsters on fire. Tony tells him to basically knock it off. He doesn't like all this negative attention. So later on, we see Ralph beating up the guy in charge of the garbage contract because he's not allowed to set fires anymore, but he's still going to be making moves to make sure that he comes out on top. Really interesting character, and I can't wait to explore him more this season. But Tony basically tells Janice to come back from Seattle or wherever she was. She left at the end of last season because of her killing Richie, and she's been basically hiding this whole time. But Tony wants her to come back to basically be with the family in this sad moment. They go to Cosarelli's funeral home, and this is the other reference to Godfather. When they go down the elevator, it looks just like when they go down to see the coroner in or the Undertaker in Godfather, and he has some lines like "I'll use all my powers," which is what Vito Corleone asked the Undertaker to do in Godfather Part 1. But Livia actually did not want a service. She didn't want any kind of ceremony at all. But Janice kind of guilts the two other siblings into doing one anyway. It's funny, she mentions that Livia used to dream about her funeral, which is just a really funny line. It's, normal people dream about like their wedding or something like that, but Livia was just such a dark, depressed person that she used to dream about her funeral. Just a great line of dialogue there. But they decide to have one, even though Livia didn't want it. Tony goes to talk to Melfi about his mother. He's having a real hard time, expressing himself. On the one hand, he is really glad that she's dead. She was just a horrible person. A lot of stress in his life was because of her. And he's now doesn't have to worry about the fact that she might have testified against him. But on the other hand, he's feeling guilty about, basically hating his mother. And he really just can't even accept that she'd wanted him dead this whole time. He still doesn't even blame her for the hit. He tries to excuse her for that. So Tony's really conflicted about how he feels. We also see that Ray Curto is a rat. I mentioned before that all of Tony's capos from the first season were rats. At least I think they were. But Ray Curto is definitely a rat. He's been working with the FBI. He's a very willing cooperator. He even asks if he can wear a wire. And it's funny that he'll never get caught for that. But we'll see more of that coming up. Janice is at the house. She's looking for money. She thinks Livia has money buried somewhere in the walls. Tony comes down and Janice reveals that Livia kept only Tony's things from his childhood. She didn't keep anything of Janice or Barbara's. She had a few things of Barbara's, but nothing from Janice. She really hated Janice, just like everyone else. But she kept all of Tony's things, which is it's a really interesting idea that, even though she did all these horrible things to her son, in many ways, I think he was her favorite child. It's a really fucked up relationship, but that's an interesting detail. The crew is complaining about having to go to Livia's funeral. They don't really want to go, but they have to because Tony's the boss. It's funny, Chris, Furio, and Adriana are getting high before the service, and it's clear that these guys don't smoke weed because, or the actors didn't smoke weed or anything because they are not clearing that bong and just not having good weed etiquette at all. But at the funeral service, we're introduced to Assemblyman Zellman, who's going to play a part in these next few seasons. We also see the Reverend that Tony was running that scheme with, and they talked about, parents passing away. That was one of the things that they were discussing, and they bring him back for this moment. At the burial site, Janice gets into a confrontation with Svetlana. She wants Svetlana out of the house, even though Tony said that she could live there for a while. And she wants this record collection that Livia gave her because it's worth money. Janice pretends that she wants it to connect with her mother, but she really just wants to sell it. And it's setting up a conflict between the two that's going to play out this season, which is really funny. Afterwards, they have a wake at the house. There's an interesting moment where Tony sees Pussy in the mirror. It's a really weird supernatural moment. There's another one similar earlier in the episode when AJ's doing his homework and he hears what he thinks is Livia in the house. There's like a creaking noise. So there's definitely some supernatural moments throughout The Sopranos like this. But Janice makes things awkward. She makes everyone come into the room and she wants them all to talk about Livia. She's really doing it to put herself at the center of things. She just wants the attention. She's such a hateable but incredibly written character. No one has anything really nice to say about Livia. They're struggling and they're kind of giving generic, like, she said what was on her mind kind of things. The only one who has something nice to say is Livia's best friend, who she ran over in the first season. She's the one she hit with her car. But even still, she really liked Livia. And she has this great little detail, which was that anytime someone was in the hospital or someone died, Livia would call this friend and let her know, which again just goes to show you how obsessed with, dark depressing things Livia was. So great little detail there. Chris is trying to say something, but he's so high and so fucked up that it's just complete nonsense. It's a really funny line of dialogue he has, and they'll reference this later at his intervention. Meanwhile, though, Carmela has had enough of all this bullshit. She's been drinking, and she finally says what everyone's thinking, which is that, Livia was a horrible person, and they're basically all bullshitting right now, trying to say nice things about her. No one liked her. Her father finally steps up and, is like, this woman was horrible and kept us away from our daughter all this time. And so the dam kind of bursts, and, people are ready to realize that, like, Livia was not a good person and not deserving of any of this kind of praise. At the end of the episode, we see Tony watching The Public Enemy. He's been watching it throughout the episode and looking at certain scenes. And we see him crying at the end when the mother of Tom Powers, who's the main character of that movie, is kind of comforting her son, and then he dies at the end. So it's obviously the movie's got him thinking about his relationship with his own mother. There's a lot of similarities between Public Enemy and Sopranos. Check out my review if you're interested. But yeah, this is the episode. I was really, really sad to see Nancy Marchand go. But still, besides that CGI fiasco, it is a pretty good send-off to her. And it'll be interesting to see where the series goes from here. So thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for the next Soprano log coming soon.